the laughingstock. The HSS Resilience limped through space like a wounded animal seeking shelter. Her hull bore the scars of a dozen emergency repairs, with mismatched metal plates welded over breach points and conduits rerouted through external housings that had never been designed for such purposes. Steam vented from damaged atmospheric recyclers, creating ghostly trails in the vacuum that marked the ship's passage like a beacon of desperation. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge, her weathered hands gripping the command rail as she watched Nexus Station grow larger on their view screen. The massive alien construct rotated slowly in the void, its crystalline spires and flowing organic curves a testament to technologies that humanity could barely comprehend. Ships from a dozen different species moved around the station with fluid grace, their hulls gleaming with perfection that made the Resilience look like scattered debris by comparison. "Approaching docking vector 79 Alpha," announced Lieutenant Alex Turner from the navigation console. At 24, he was the youngest member of their skeleton crew, but his steady hands and quick mind had kept them flying through situations that should have killed them all. "Station control is directing us to the outer maintenance ring." Elena wasn't surprised. The outer ring was where they put ships that weren't considered important enough for the primary docking bays. It was a subtle insult that she had grown accustomed to during their 3-month journey through alien space. Humanity had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel, and the established galactic civilizations viewed them as primitive newcomers who had stumbled into technologies they didn't deserve. "At least they're letting us dock at all," muttered Chief Engineer Rosa Santos as she emerged from a maintenance hatch, her dark hair streaked with coolant and her coveralls bearing fresh scorch marks. "The port fusion reactor just hiccuped again. I've got it stable for now, but we're going to need real parts soon, not the salvaged junk we've been making do with." Rosa had been performing miracles for months, keeping their dying ship operational. Through a combination of technical expertise and pure stubborn determination, she had trained on Earth's most advanced vessels, but those skills meant little when dealing with a ship that had been damaged so badly that most of its original systems had been replaced with whatever they could find, borrow, or jury-rig from alien technologies they barely understood. Dr. Marcus Chen looked up from his scientific instruments with the distracted air of a man perpetually lost in thought. His research into exotic energy phenomena had brought them out here to the galaxy's edge, chasing readings that defied conventional physics. Most of the galactic scientific community had dismissed his theories as the fantasies of a primitive species, but Elena had seen enough impossible things in her years as a military officer to keep an open mind. "The energy signatures are getting stronger," Marcus reported, adjusting his thick glasses as he studied cascading data streams. "Whatever's out there in the dead sectors, it's not natural. The quantum resonance patterns suggest artificial generation on a massive scale. Doctor, with respect, we need to focus on staying alive long enough to file your report," said Communications Officer Zara Okafor from her station. Her fingers danced across alien interface panels with practiced ease as she managed the complex protocols required to communicate with dozens of different species simultaneously. "Nexus Control is demanding updated cargo manifests, diplomatic credentials, and payment verification in 17 different currencies." Elena nodded grimly. Their official mission was scientific research, but everyone knew they were really out here because humanity needed allies. Earth's government had scraped together resources to send small exploration teams into galactic space, hoping to establish trade relationships and diplomatic ties that might secure humanity's future. So far, the results had been disappointing. The docking procedure took twice as long as it should have because their automated systems kept failing and requiring manual intervention. By the time they finally sealed their airlock to the station, word of their arrival had apparently spread throughout Nexus Station's alien population. Elena could see crowds gathering at observation windows to stare at the pathetic human vessel, with a mixture of amusement and pity. The station's main concourse was a marvel of alien architecture, with soaring spaces that seemed to defy gravity, and atmospheric processors that somehow maintained breathable environments for dozens of different species simultaneously. But Elena felt the weight of countless stares as she led her crew through the crowded passages. Conversation stopped when they passed, only to resume in whispered tones and barely suppressed laughter. At the Central Authority office, they were met by Administrator Kelthex, a tall, graceful being whose species had been exploring the stars since before humans had discovered fire. His elongated features held an expression of barely concealed disdain as he reviewed their documentation, with obvious reluctance. "Your research permits appear to be in order," Kelthex said in perfectly accented Standard Galactic, his voice carrying the tone one might use when addressing a particularly slow child. "Though I must express concern about your vessel's condition. Are you certain it's safe to operate in deep space?" "We've made it this far," Elena replied evenly, refusing to let the insult affect her posture or tone. "Our ship may not look like much, but it gets the job done." "Yes, I'm sure," Kelthex replied with what passed for a smile among his species. "Perhaps you would benefit from observing how proper vessels are constructed. The Zenthari Heavy Industries showcase is currently displaying their latest exploration cruiser in Bay Alpha Prime. Their quantum shielding alone represents more technological advancement than your entire species has achieved." Elena accepted the backhanded invitation with professional courtesy, though she noticed Alex's jaw tighten with anger. The young officer had grown up hearing stories of humanity's struggles to reach the stars, and the casual dismissal of their achievements clearly stung. Rosa muttered something uncomplimentary in Portuguese that thankfully didn't translate through the universal communicators. The Zenthari vessel was indeed impressive. The ZDS Infinity stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull crafted from exotic materials that seemed to shift color in the station's artificial lighting. Guided force fields contained its quantum reactor core and weapon systems that could sterilize planets lay dormant in retractable housings. A small crowd of alien dignitaries toured the ship under the guidance of Zenthari engineers who spoke reverently of their vessel's capabilities. "Observe the integrated neural networks," the lead engineer was explaining as Elena's crew joined the tour group. "Every system communicates instantaneously with every other system. Our predictive algorithms can anticipate and counter any conceivable threat. The ship literally thinks faster than its enemies can act." Elena found herself studying the vessel with a professional eye, noting the elegant efficiency of its design and the casual confidence of its crew. These beings had been building starships for millennia, and it showed in every detail. But something nagged at her, a vague sense that all this perfection might have a price that wasn't immediately obvious. The tour concluded with a demonstration of the ship's defensive capabilities. Holographic displays showed how the Infinity systems would respond to various attack scenarios, each response perfectly calculated and executed with mechanical precision. The alien audience murmured appreciatively at each display of technological superiority. Of course, the Zenthari engineer concluded with obvious pride, such capabilities are far beyond the reach of newer species. Perhaps in a few thousand years, humans might develop similar technologies. The comment drew polite laughter from the assembled aliens, and Elena saw her crew's faces darken with embarrassment and anger. But before anyone could respond, Marcus Chen stepped forward with the distracted urgency that usually meant he had discovered something important. "Captain," he said quietly, "I'm reading those energy signatures again. Much stronger than before. Whatever's generating them is moving toward inhabited space." Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's atmospheric controls. The dead sectors were regions of space where entire star systems had gone mysteriously silent, their populations vanishing without explanation or distress calls. Most galactic authorities assumed the missing civilizations had fallen victim to natural disasters or wars, but Marcus's readings suggested something far more ominous. "How long before it reaches the nearest populated system?" she asked. Marcus consulted his instruments with growing alarm. "At current velocity, less than 72 hours. Captain, the energy output is increasing exponentially. Whatever's out there, it's getting stronger." The revelation cast their situation in a new light. The Resilience might be the only ship close enough to investigate the threat before it reached innocent populations. Elena made her decision with the swift certainty that had served her well during her military career. "We're going to take a look," she announced to her crew. "Rosa, how long do you need to get us ready for deep space operation?" "Give me 6 hours to patch the worst leaks and balance the reactor cores," Rosa replied without hesitation. "It won't," Be pretty, but we'll hold together long enough to see what's out there. As they prepared to leave Nexus Station, word of their mission spread through the alien community. The response was predictably dismissive. Why would anyone send the pathetic human vessel to investigate something that had stumped the galaxy's greatest minds? It was clearly a desperate gesture by a species too primitive to understand their own limitations, but Elena had learned something during her years in space that the advanced alien civilizations seemed to have forgotten. Sometimes the greatest strengths came from the most unexpected places, and sometimes survival depended not on perfection, but on the ability to adapt when everything went wrong. The HSS Resilience departed Nexus Station 12 hours later, carrying a crew of 5 humans into the unknown darkness of the dead sectors. Behind them, alien observers shook their heads in what they assumed was pity for a doomed species. None of them imagined that they were watching the beginning of humanity's rise to become the galaxy's most feared protectors. The galaxy's last hope. The HSS Resilience drifted through the graveyard of civilizations, her damaged sensors struggling to penetrate the unnatural darkness that filled the dead sectors. Where thriving star systems should have been, only empty. Void remained, as if entire worlds had been erased from existence. The ship's hull creaked and groaned under the stress of gravitational anomalies that defied conventional physics, while her crew worked frantically to understand the threat that had consumed everything in its path. Captain Elena Vasquez stood at the center of the bridge, her eyes fixed on the main display where Dr. Marcus Chen's readings painted a picture of cosmic horror. The energy signatures that had drawn them here were no longer distant mysteries but immediate and overwhelming realities. Something vast and ancient moved through the darkness ahead of them, leaving nothing but emptiness in its wake. Range 2, the primary energy source? Elena asked, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they faced. 15,000 kilometers in closing, Lieutenant Alex Turner reported from his station. The young officer's hands trembled slightly as he monitored their approach, but his voice remained professional. Whatever it is, it's massive. The gravitational distortion suggests a construct larger than most space stations. Chief Engineer Rosa Santos emerged from a maintenance crawlway, her face grim with exhaustion and determination. Captain, I've managed to stabilize our primary systems, but we're running on borrowed time. The quantum flux out here is playing havoc with our reactor containment. One wrong move and we could lose main power entirely. Elena nodded, accepting the report with the calm that had carried her through countless crises. The Resilience had been living on borrowed time since the day they left Earth, held together by skill, determination, and pure stubborn refusal to surrender. If they were going to face their end, at least it would be while trying to protect others. There, whispered Marcus Chen, his voice filled with horrified fascination. Visual contact. The main screen flickered and resolved into an image that would haunt Elena's dreams for the rest of her life. The Devourer hung in space like a mechanical cancer, its surface writhing with organic-looking tendrils that pulsed with malevolent energy. The construct was impossibly large, easily dwarfing the greatest achievements of galactic engineering, and it radiated an aura of ancient hunger that seemed to reach across space to claw at their souls. Scanning now, Marcus reported, his scientific training overriding his terror. The energy absorption patterns are incredible. It's literally feeding on the quantum vacuum itself, converting matter and energy into pure sustenance. No wonder. Entire star systems have vanished without trace. Communications Officer Zara Okafor looked up from her station with mounting alarm. Captain, I'm detecting multiple energy signatures throughout the dead sectors. This isn't the only one. There are dozens of these things, maybe hundreds, all awakening simultaneously. The implications struck Elena like a physical blow. If even one of these devourers was capable of consuming entire star systems, a whole swarm of them could devour the galaxy itself. Every civilization, every world, every life form would be reduced to fuel for these ancient mechanisms of destruction. Any response to communication attempts? Elena asked, though she already suspected the answer. Nothing, Zara replied. They don't communicate because they don't negotiate. They simply consume. As if responding to their scrutiny, the nearest devourer began to move toward them with predatory purpose. Tendrils of energy reached out from its massive form. probing the space around the Resilience with obvious intent. Elena felt the hair on her arms stand up as the ship's hull began to vibrate in resonance with the alien construct's emanations. "Evasive. Maneuvers," she ordered. "Alex, get us out of its immediate range." The lieutenant's hands flew over his controls, but the ship's response was sluggish and unpredictable. The Resilience had never been built for high-performance maneuvering, and her damaged systems made every course correction a gamble. They barely managed to avoid the first energy tendril, which passed close enough to their hull to leave scorch marks on the outer plating. "We can't outrun it," Alex reported with controlled panic. "Our engines aren't designed for this kind of acceleration, and even if they were, that thing is faster than anything I've ever seen." Rosa's voice crackled over the intercom from the engine room. "Captain, I'm reading massive power fluctuations throughout the ship. Whatever that thing is doing to us, it's interfering with our quantum containment fields. We could have a cascade failure at any moment." Elena felt the familiar weight of impossible decisions settling on her shoulders. They could try to flee, but their damaged ship would never escape something that could devour star systems. They could try to fight, but their pathetic weapons would be less than useless against a construct of such magnitude. Or they could try something that no rational person would consider. "Marcus, you said this thing feeds on quantum energy," she said suddenly. "What happens if we feed it something it can't digest?" The scientist looked up from his instruments with growing comprehension. "You're talking about destabilizing our own reactor core. Captain, that would be suicide. The explosion would vaporize us instantly." "Maybe," Elena replied grimly. "But our reactor isn't like anything the galaxy has seen before. It's held together with salvaged parts, jury-rigged connections, and pure human stubbornness. What if its instability is actually an advantage?" Rosa's voice came through the intercom with sudden excitement. "Wait. I see what you're thinking. Our containment fields are already fluctuating randomly because of all the damage we've taken. If I could deliberately destabilize them in a controlled cascade, the energy output would be completely chaotic and unpredictable." "Exactly," Elena said, her mind racing through the possibilities. "Every other species builds their reactors to be stable and predictable. This thing has probably learned to digest every known form of quantum energy, but it's never encountered anything like our particular brand of barely controlled disaster." Alex stared at her in amazement. "You want to turn our ship into a weapon by making it even more broken than it already is?" "Sometimes the best weapons are the ones nobody expects," Elena replied. "Rosa, how long do you need?" "Give me 10 minutes to rewire the containment protocols," the engineer responded. "But Captain, once I start this process, there's no going back. We'll either destroy that thing or go up with it." "Understood. Zara, send a priority message to Nexus Station. Tell them what we've found, and warn them that more of these things are coming. If we don't make it back, someone needs to know what's out there." The next few minutes passed in tense preparation. Rosa worked frantically to modify their reactor systems, essentially turning their ship's greatest weakness into its most dangerous feature. Marcus refined his sensor readings to better understand their enemies' vulnerabilities. Alex prepared to execute the most precise flying of his career, maneuvering their dying ship close enough to their target to ensure maximum effectiveness. Meanwhile, the Devourer continued its approach, its massive form casting shadows that seemed to bend reality itself. Energy tendrils probed ever closer to the Resilience, seeking to drain the quantum energy that sustained all life and technology. When they finally made contact with the ship's hull, the effect was immediate and terrifying. "Hull breach in Section 7, Rosa reported. "The thing is trying to feed on our reactor core directly." "Perfect," Elena said with grim satisfaction. "Let it get a good taste." "Rosa, initiate the cascade." The chief engineer's hands moved over her modified controls with the precision of a concert pianist. Deep within the ship's core, carefully maintained containment fields began to fluctuate. In patterns that defied every principle of safe reactor operation, the Resilience shuddered as raw quantum energy began to build to levels that should have been impossible to contain. "Energy output climbing beyond all safety parameters," Marcus reported, his voice tight with fear and fascination. The resonance patterns are completely chaotic. I don't think even we can predict what's going to happen. The Devourer's feeding tendrils had fully penetrated their hull now, drawing directly from the ship's power core with the confidence of a predator that had never encountered prey capable of fighting back. But as the chaotic energy began to flow into the ancient construct, something unprecedented occurred. The Devourer's feeding rhythm faltered. For eons, it had consumed orderly energy sources that followed predictable quantum patterns. The human reactor's output was different, wild, unstable, and completely unpredictable. Instead of nourishing the construct, the chaotic energy began to disrupt its internal processes. "It's working," Marcus shouted over the growing vibration of the ship. "The quantum cascade is interfering with its digestive matrix. The thing can't process our energy output." Elena watched in amazement as the massive construct began to convulse, its organic-looking surface rippling with distress. The Devourer had spent millions of years perfecting its ability to consume any form of matter or energy it encountered, but it had never faced anything as beautifully, chaotically broken as human engineering. "All power to engines," Elena ordered. "We need to get clear before the cascade reaches critical mass." The Resilience pulled away from the dying Devourer with painful slowness, her engines straining against the gravitational distortions created by the construct's death throes. Behind them, the ancient mechanism of destruction tore itself apart as it tried futilely to process energy patterns that existed outside the laws of physics it understood. The explosion that followed lit up the dead sectors like a newborn star. When the radiation cleared, nothing remained of the Devourer but dissipating quantum particles, and the echo of its ancient hunger finally silenced. "We did it," Alex whispered in amazement. "We actually killed something that consumed entire star systems." But their victory celebration was cut short by Zara's urgent report. "Captain, I'm receiving emergency transmissions from across the galaxy. The other Devourers are moving toward inhabited space. The Xanthari fleet just engaged one near the Kepler Nebula, and they're being completely overwhelmed." Elena felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders once again. They had proven that the Devourers could be defeated, but only by using the kind of chaotic, unpredictable approach that came naturally to humans struggling with failing technology. The galaxy's advanced civilizations, with their perfect ships and predictable tactics, would be helpless against enemies that adapted to overcome any conventional defense. "Set course for the Kepler Nebula," she ordered. "Maximum speed." "Captain," Rosa protested, "our reactor core is barely holding together after that cascade. I don't know if we can survive another engagement." "Then we'll have to make sure we don't need another engagement," Elena replied. "We're going to teach the galaxy how to fight dirty." The HSS Resilience limped toward the Kepler Nebula, carrying humanity's greatest weapon, the ability to turn disadvantage into victory through sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat. Behind them, the first Devourer in millions of years lay dead in space, destroyed not by superior technology or overwhelming force, but by the chaotic ingenuity of a species that had learned to make strength from weakness. As news of their victory spread through galactic communication networks, the laughter and mockery that had followed humanity's arrival in space began to transform into something else entirely. Respect, fear, and the dawning realization that the galaxy's most dangerous protectors had been hiding in plain sight all along, disguised as failures who were too stubborn to admit defeat.